I want to know how you're doing and then just give us a short introduction about yourself.
Yeah, my name's Dean Clifford. I'm 45 years old, living in Brisbane in Queensland, Australia, and I'm going fantastic at the moment, really healthy and really strong. So just enjoying life and living it to the fullest.
And can you explain what epidermolysis bullosa is, especially for those who may be hearing about this rare genetic skin condition for the first time?
Yeah, so like you said, it's an extremely rare genetic skin condition that I was born with from birth, and so what that means is there's a sort of a mutation in our genetic makeup, I guess you could say. So the my skin, I've still got the same skin layers as everybody else and everything, but I don't have the genetic compounds that go into the anchoring my skin together and the binding agents. So that's sort of, I think it's a collagen or some sort of there's a medical terminology for it that escapes me, but basically it's the anchors that hold my skin together to give it the skin strength and integrity. So my skin is in the medical books as being as regarded as strong as tissue paper or butterfly wings, which is why we use the butterfly logo on a lot of our charity organisations. And so, yeah, the slightest sort of movement, friction, where if somebody sort of bumps into you, you yourself, you might get a small bruise or a little scratch. With me, my skin will just peel straight off. There's no strength and integrity to my skin. So it's an extremely rare skin condition and something that a lot of young kids and adults and even parents have a real difficult time struggling with because literally everything from walking, from moving, any sort of friction, picking up cuddles, kissing, any sort of friction that's applied to your skin potentially for me will just make it shear straight off. So sometimes we develop severe blisters. Other times the skin will just split straight open and we'll have a severe wound. And then because we don't have the anchors that hold our skin together, it's extremely long process and difficult process to heal a wound. So again, sort of using an analogy for somebody without EB, if they get a cut or something, it might take a day or two for a small wound or a small cut to slowly heal and repair. With me, we're talking years or we're talking months for the skin to slowly repair and heal itself. So it's a very difficult one of the more painful genetic skin conditions that the medical world has come across. But as I said, these days I've got it under control very well and I'm handling it really well these days.
And have you ever undergone a clinical trial such as gene therapy?
Yeah, over the years, I've tried heaps of different experimental procedures from skin grafting to all sorts of taking skin biopsies and trying to sort of genetically add the missing compounds or the missing areas. And so these days, I prefer to just focus on quality of life and living my life to the fullest. And I still keep in touch with the medical world very closely, but I choose to live my life sort of more independently from the medical world and sort of keep up to date with a lot of the new trials and treatments that's happening right around the world. But as of the more recent years, there's been nothing that I've sort of decided is worth trialing. I've sort of done all that when I was younger, and as I said, I sort of focus on living life these days and achieving everything that I want to achieve.
And do you have any siblings, Dean?
Yeah, I've got a older sister who's perfectly healthy. So again,
Mhm.
that's sort of the genetic sort of luck of the draw, I guess you could say, or the sort of it's a very rare condition. Usually, it's got to be in both the mother and father, the sort of genetic abnormality. There are exceptions to the rule where it can be the dominant gene in sort of that in a single parent kind of situation, but most of the time it's the sort of genetic markers have to be in both the mother and father for there to be any chance of having a baby. So my sister was is a couple of years older than me, and she's perfectly healthy. And yeah, we had no family history tree of it in being present in our heritage and going through the lines. So it was something that mum and dad had no idea that they were both carriers of the sort of EB gene, I guess you could say. And so then when I came along, it was a huge shock to the system, which it is to most parents. Most people have no awareness of EB because it's such a rare skin condition, and sadly, a lot of people pass away before they get to be my age, or sort of there's still a high fatality rate. So it's very uncommon in the community. So it's not something that people are looking for in their genetic makeup unless it presents in the family tree like myself. So yeah, it's usually something that is very difficult for new parents or parents when all of a sudden a baby's born with significant skin loss and significant skin trauma and everything to then work out and sort of identify exactly what it is and then work out the sort of best treatment on a day-to-day basis and going forward. So it's a very difficult thing to be initially presented with, and then a very difficult thing on a day-to-day basis that you've got to try to manage as well.
And now let's move to the secret of success. How did you go from a physically weak and frequently sick child to becoming a weightlifter and successful motivational speaker?
Yeah, I've always loved sport. I've always been the type of person that has pushed myself. I think a lot of that comes down to my parents who never sort of hid away from me trying to live life and trying to push the boundaries and see what my skin was capable of doing. My skin is incredibly fragile. It's as I said, it's in the medical books as being as strong as tissue paper, and that is still very much the case. But I've always been pushing myself. As I said, I've always been a very sport-orientated person, very focused on trying to keep up with people that I'd see my sister or my older cousins or other family members that we had. So I was always looking for things that I could do. And unfortunately, my skin is incredibly limiting in my movement and what I am and what I can and can't do. But going back now over 20 years ago, I remember just sort of hanging out with a few friends, and they said how strong I must be to be able to push myself around in the wheelchair on a day-to-day basis, and to be able to, if my feet and my legs aren't great because I've got blisters or I've got a lot of skin damage on my legs, to just be able to sort of pull myself up out of the chair using my arms or using my upper body sort of strength. And they always said it was such a shame that I could never put that into a sporting aspect because there had to be a lot of physical strength there. And I said, well, I probably could if I worked it out and adapted it to my way. So we sort of on that day just said, well, can I do a push up the same as everybody else? And I couldn't put the weight directly on my hands. So I grabbed a couple of cushions and sort of used, cushions and pillows as a bit of a protective thing. So I didn't have the ground or the hard surface to that my hands were getting damaged by, and I found out that I could do as many push-ups as anybody else. If somebody said, "Can you do 20 in a row?" I did 20. If they said another challenge to do 50, I could do 50. And so over the course of the day, every little challenge that we kept trying to come up with, I kept working out a way to adapt it to what my skin was capable of doing and how my movement was sort of able to how much movement I had and how much I could do. And then a couple of days later, that led to one of my really good friends taking me into a private gym, and he just said, "Well, if you want to try some weights and try lifting." Things that he was doing on a daily basis. He said there's no one around. We cleared everybody out of this huge big sports gymnasium and had the entire place to myself. And my mate said, "Well, nothing's going to fall on you. He'll make sure no, there was no one around to bump into me. I had the whole gym to myself, and we just started trialing different things. And on that very day, I was able to lift my body weight in the gym, just using all the same equipment that all the other professional athletes used. And so that sort of triggered maybe my skin doesn't allow me to run like I could do as a child anymore. It doesn't allow me to, kick a football or do these sort of things. But maybe there'd be an opportunity to do some gym basic exercises and sort of working out that. So we spent a fair bit of time again adapting, working it all out. Turns out, like I said, my skin doesn't allow me to do a lot of things, but high intensity sport gym exercises where you've only got the weights in your hand for a very short amount of time and wearing protective gloves on your hands, it allows me to do very intense high weights, high volume stuff in the gym. And so we worked out a training program then that saw me going from, as you said, one of the sickest and weakest people in the room to then becoming one of the strongest in the world, lifting well over double my body weight. It's been an amazing transformation. But again, it all comes down to not limiting myself, being willing to try things, being willing to adapt things to how I thought would work best for my health and my skin and my body, and then giving it 100% and pushing myself to the absolute limit. It's been great fun. I love it.
And what are the kinds of topics that you usually speak about when you are invited to share your story?
Every presentation I do, whether it's for charity, for fundraising, or for huge big corporations, that I've been lucky enough to speak in front of huge big conferences or government events. Everything I talk about, it's all based around my life experiences. So no two presentations are ever the same. Sometimes I'll talk more about my sporting background and my sporting abilities. Other times it's been a lot more work orientated. Sometimes I'm just hanging out with school kids and talking about different obstacles I had to face when I was their age, dealing with school issues and trying to fit into the schooling sort of environment, which even though it was very different for me, it's something that every kid can relate to, trying to fit in and trying to, find friends and develop that sort of social understanding in school. Then I jump for the next day, I'll be, in Parliament House speaking in front of a whole heap of politicians and jump into a huge big conference centre speaking to a few thousand people. And so, as I said, every presentation I do, while they can be as varied and as diverse as you can possibly think of in audiences and sort of venues, it's all based on my experiences and things that I've had to overcome. Then talking about the sort of five keys that I used mentally to try to push myself, and the sort of five keys to success that I've used throughout my entire life, whether it's sporting, whether it's social interactions, or whether it's business world. I sort of focus on trying to inspire people and trying to deliver a really unique message based on my experiences, talking about the different struggles I've faced and how I've been able to overcome all the obstacles to achieve some pretty amazing things in my life.
Now, let's talk about Deborah and your role as an official ambassador, as well as how your work has impacted people with EB and even those without this condition.
Yeah, I've sort of been an unofficial ambassador my entire life. I've always been, in the public eye, talking about it from a day-to-day living, doing a lot of media because it's such a rare condition. People are fascinated. So, in the streets, some people will come up and ask and inquire and genuinely wanting to learn about my skin because visually I look so different to everybody else. So I've always sort of been an unofficial ambassador in a way, and then probably I think we must be coming up to nearly 10 years now. I've become an official ambassador, and so my role is basically everything you can imagine, from trying to raise the profile and get fundraising opportunities off the ground to being able to support, like I was saying earlier, new families that are trying to deal with the very difficult medical world and trying to get their head around understanding what's happening to their sick child, for me to be able to share some of the struggles that I've been through, but also a lot of the positive things that I've been able to achieve. I think really gives parents a lot of hope for their new child that they're sort of fearing may not be able to achieve much in the world. Than just being able, like I was saying, to hang out with kids and young adults that are really dealing with the difficulties of living with a really, really severe disability. It is a very intense daily basis to go through medical routines that can take hours and hours, and then being able to work out how you fit into society and fit into the real world when you're dealing with, a very serious medical condition and very limiting in what your capabilities are. So to be able to hang out with those kids and those young adults and just sort of show some of the things that I've been able to achieve, and show some of the sort of, like I was saying earlier, the mental keys that I've used to deal with pain, to deal with the life obstacles that gets thrown our way, and then trying to sort of encourage the kids to aim, and not just kids, but also the young adults and adults there that are around in the world these days, to be able to aim high and think of a really huge life for themselves. They don't have to just be homebound in their own little medical room dealing with very severe skin and blisters and wounds. That they can, aim big and expect to achieve huge things in their life. We have a huge lot to add to the world because our day-to-day life is so different, and the struggles that we have to face on a day-to-day basis can be so different and so extreme. We have a lot of value to add to the world to sort of show perspective and sort of guidance in the world. So I love being able to share my story, like we're saying, within the EB community, within the broader Deborah community, but then just in society in general as a motivational speaker, and trying to sort of highlight the possibilities rather than all the negativities that are often in the world that we face with.
Now let's move to the last question. What message would you like to share with others living with EB? And what lasting impact do you hope to leave for people without EB, especially those who are healthy, to learn from you?
Yeah, I think we kind of summed that up almost in the last question there as well. I think the biggest thing is just that not being afraid to try things, and especially when you're living with EB, our skin is incredibly fragile, and our day-to-day life can be so drastic. I personally can go from being very healthy today to waking up with a skin wound and a problem that will tomorrow, that will have just arisen from no reason at all, just from being alive, basically, and just from I might have sat on the chair the wrong way or leaned up against something just the wrong way the day before that I didn't even realize, and I'll wake up tomorrow with a huge skin loss on my back or on my leg or whatever. So our day-to-day life can be so drastically different. So that's one of the big things that I try to get across in all my presentations, is just not to take life for granted, just to be open to every opportunity and really try to seize every moment and live each day to its fullest, and take advantage of those amazing opportunities that can come our way, and not sort of stop and think in a week's time, probably should have done this or done that when the opportunity arises. Just grab hold of life and run with it, and you'll be amazed at what you're capable of achieving.